Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going deep into the world of emotions. We're going to be talking about Brené Brown's Atlas of the Heart,
Oh, yeah, a classic.
a classic. And I know 87 emotions, that sounds like a lot.
A lot to handle.
It's a lot to handle, but don't worry.
We gotcha.
We gotcha. Because we are going to be using the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu.
Yeah, he breaks it down, makes it much more manageable.
Yeah, it's a fantastic resource if you want to get to the heart of the matter and understand these important concepts without having to, spend hours and hours and hours reading.
Absolutely perfect for our listener on the go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's start with the basics. What is Atlas of the Heart really all about? What's the big idea here as summarized by the 1 Hour Guide?
Well, I think in a nutshell, Brené Brown is really trying to teach us to be fluent in emotions, to be able to understand them, name them, and articulate them. And the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu really emphasizes this point.
So it's like emotional literacy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like
Yeah.
having a superpower.
Right, because I think we've all had those moments where we feel something, but we just can't quite put it into words.
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that can lead to all sorts of problems. Miscommunications, frustrations, missed opportunities.
Especially as a leader.
Absolutely. When you're in a position where you need to motivate, inspire, guide people,
You need to understand what's going on.
you need to be able to communicate clearly and effectively. And that starts with understanding your own emotions and the emotions of those around you.
Right. So how does Atlas of the Heart and the 1 Hour Guide actually help us do that?
Well, Brené Brown uses this really powerful analogy of emotions as places we visit. Like, imagine you're exploring a new city without a map. It's going to be confusing, right?
Yeah, you're going to get lost.
You're going to get lost. You're going to miss all the good stuff.
Yeah.
So the book and the 1 Hour Guide really provides this framework, this map for navigating our inner world.
I love that analogy because
Yeah.
it makes it so much more tangible, right? Like emotions can feel so abstract and overwhelming.
But they can,
Yeah.
especially when you think about 87 of them.
Yeah, exactly. But if you think about it as places we visit, places we can explore, it just feels more manageable.
Yeah, it gives us a sense of control. And it also helps us understand that we rarely experience just one emotion at a time.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
It's usually a mix, right?
Yeah, exactly. The 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu really highlights this point. It's like a symphony with different instruments playing together.
I've never thought about it like that.
You've got your anxiety, your joy, your sadness, your anger, all blending together to create this complex emotional experience.
And understanding those interactions, how those different emotions play off of each other. I feel like that's a game changer in terms of understanding ourselves and others.
Oh, absolutely. And it's crucial for effective communication, conflict resolution, leadership, pretty much everything.
Okay, so we've talked about emotional literacy and this idea of emotions as places. Now, Brené Brown is also very well known for her work on vulnerability and courage. Does that play a role in Atlas of the Heart as well? And what does the 1 Hour Guide have to say about that?
Absolutely. Vulnerability is a huge part of this book. The 1 Hour Guide really drives home this point. Vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the key to connection and courage.
That's so counterintuitive, right?
Sure.
Like we're often taught to hide our vulnerabilities.
Especially in a professional setting.
Exactly. Like we're supposed to put on this brave face and pretend that we have it all together.
Right. But the 1 Hour Guide emphasizes that avoiding vulnerability actually keeps us stuck.
So it's like we're building walls instead of bridges,
Yeah, exactly. And it prevents us from experiencing true connection and intimacy.
which ultimately impacts our leadership, our relationships, our overall well-being.
Absolutely. And, it's tempting to avoid those uncomfortable emotions. Like, who wants to feel shame or fear or grief?
Nobody wants to sign up for that.
Nobody.
Mm.
But the 1 Hour Guide makes it very clear that avoidance comes with a price tag.
So it's like that saying, what we resist persists.
Exactly. It might feel good in the short term, but ultimately it keeps us from reaching our full potential.
So facing those emotions head on, even when it's tough, that's the path to growth.
Absolutely. It's like clearing out the emotional clutter so we can move forward with more clarity and purpose.
I love that analogy. And that's what Atlas of the Heart, as explained in the 1 Hour Guide, really empowers us to do.
Exactly. Are you ready to explore some specific emotional landscapes?
Let's do it.
All right. Let's dive in. All right, so let's jump into some of these specific emotions and see how they play out in our lives. Chapter 1 of Atlas of the Heart, as summarized in the 1 Hour Guide, dives into this whole realm of uncertainty. When things are ambiguous and we start to feel that stress, that overwhelm, that anxiety.
Oh, yeah. The what-if spiral.
Exactly. And for our listener, someone who's Leading a team, building a business, taking risks.
It comes with the territory.
It comes with the territory, right?
Right.
So understanding these emotions is crucial.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
What I found really helpful was the one-hour guy's explanation of anxiety versus worry. Because I think we often use those terms interchangeably, but they're actually quite different.
They are. The 1 Hour Guide breaks it down really well. Anxiety is that kind of free-floating unease, often about the future. It's that feeling of, oh, something bad might happen. But worry is more specific. It's when we start to create those mental stories, those loop-de-loops about what could go wrong.
And that can be so paralyzing.
It can. It takes us out of the present moment and into this vortex of what ifs.
And I think for leaders, that can be especially dangerous.
Yeah.
Because if you're constantly worried about what might happen, you're not going to be able to make clear decisions or take effective action.
Exactly. The 1 Hour Guide emphasizes that worry is not preparation.
It's just spinning your wheels.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
how do we escape that worry trap? Well, Atlas of the Heart, as summarized in the 1 Hour Guide, encourages us to shift from worry to problem solving.
Okay, so instead of getting caught in those mental loop-de-loops, we need to ask ourselves, what's within my control? What concrete steps can I take to address this situation?
Exactly. And that's where real leadership lies, in the ability to take action even when we're feeling uncertain.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so let's move on to chapter 2, which tackles the tricky topic of comparison.
Oh, comparison, the double-edged sword.
It can be so motivating and so destructive at the same time.
Absolutely. It's like this constant tug of war between I'm not good enough and I can achieve anything.
And I think for anyone who's in a competitive field or, striving for success, it's something that we all deal with.
Oh, for sure. The 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu does a fantastic job of breaking down all the nuances of comparison, all those
Yeah.
different shades of envy, jealousy, resentment.
But also admiration, inspiration even.
Exactly. And what I found really interesting was the concept of Freudenfreud.
Freudenfreud, that's a new one for me.
Yeah, it's basically the opposite of envy. It's feeling joy at someone else's success.
Oh, wow. So instead of feeling threatened or resentful, you're genuinely happy for them.
Exactly. And the 1 Hour Guide suggests that cultivating Freudenfreud is a superpower, especially for leaders.
Because it fosters a more collaborative, supportive environment.
Exactly. It shows your team that you're not threatened by their achievements. You're actually inspired by them.
And that creates a much more positive culture where everyone feels safe to shine.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's move on to chapter 3, which explores what happens when things don't go according to plan.
The land of unmet expectations, setbacks, disappointments.
Yeah, it's not the most fun place to visit, but it's inevitable.
We all end up there at some point.
We do. And the 1 Hour Guide really shines here because it encourages us to examine our expectations. Are they realistic? Are they serving us?
Because sometimes I think we set ourselves up for disappointment by clinging too tightly to how we think things should be.
Exactly. The 1 Hour Guide reminds us that life is full of surprises, and sometimes those surprises are not what we ordered.
So it's about learning to be flexible and adaptable.
Absolutely. And it's also about reframing regret. Instead of dwelling on the past, ask yourself, what did I learn? How can I grow from this?
So regret can actually be a powerful teacher if we approach it with the right mindset.
Exactly. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and venture into chapter 4, which the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu calls the beyond.
The beyond. It sounds mysterious and intriguing.
It is. It's the realm of emotions that connect us to something bigger than ourselves.
So we're talking about things like awe, wonder, curiosity, a sense of mystery and possibility.
Exactly. Those feelings that expand our perspective and make us feel more alive.
Now, this might sound a bit out there for our listener who's focused on the practicalities of leadership and business.
It might. But the 1 Hour Guide actually makes a strong case for why these beyond emotions are crucial in a professional context.
Really?
Yeah, think about it. Curiosity fuels exploration. Wonder sparks creativity. Awe opens us up to new ideas.
So it's not enough to just focus on the bottom line. Leaders need to cultivate a sense of wonder and possibility within themselves and their teams.
Absolutely. The 1 Hour Guide gives some great examples of how leaders can do this. Sharing inspiring stories, encouraging experimentation, celebrating curiosity.
It's about creating a culture where people feel safe to ask what if and explore new horizons.
Exactly. Okay, are you ready to get a little uncomfortable?
Uh-oh. What's coming next?
Chapter 5 takes us to those places we go when things aren't what they seem. It's the land of cognitive dissonance, irony, sarcasm, even nostalgia.
Nostalgia. How does that fit in?
Well, nostalgia is often about viewing the past through rose-colored glasses. We remember things differently than they actually were.
Ah, so it's a form of illusion.
In a way, yeah. The one-hour guide reminds us that while nostalgia can be comforting, it can also keep us stuck, preventing us from moving forward.
So it's about finding that balance between cherishing the past and embracing the present.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about cognitive dissonance. That uncomfortable feeling we get when our beliefs clash with our actions or when we're confronted with information that contradicts what we thought we knew.
Oh yeah, that's a tough one.
It is. But the one-hour guide suggests that cognitive dissonance, while unpleasant, is actually an opportunity for growth. It forces us to re-examine our assumptions and potentially make changes.
So it's like a wake-up call pushing us to evolve our thinking.
Exactly. What about irony and sarcasm? Those can be tricky to navigate, especially in a professional setting.
For sure. Any advice from the one-hour guide on how to use them effectively?
The one-hour guide cautions against relying too heavily on sarcasm, especially for leaders. It can create a culture of cynicism or make people feel unsafe to express themselves.
So it's about choosing our words carefully and using humor with intention and empathy.
Exactly. Okay, brace yourself because chapter 6 takes us to a much heavier place. The places we go when we're hurting.
Grief, sadness, despair, heartbreak. This is tough stuff.
It is. But the one-hour guide has some valuable insights on how to navigate these difficult emotions.
Well, one of the things that stood out to me was the books and the guide's distinction between sadness and despair. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. The one-hour guide explains that sadness is a natural, healthy response to loss or disappointment. It's painful, yes, but it's part of the human experience. Despair, on the other hand, is much more intense and debilitating. It's a feeling of utter hopelessness, like there's no way out.
So it's like sadness is a wave that we can ride, whereas despair is an undertow that can pull us under.
That's a great analogy. And the one-hour guide by Anil Nathu emphasizes the importance of connection when we're struggling with despair. Reaching out for support, talking to someone we trust, remembering that we're not alone in our pain.
It's about finding those lifelines that can help us stay afloat.
Exactly. Now let's talk about grief. It's an emotion that I think a lot of us avoid, even though it's a universal experience.
Yeah, it's definitely not something we're taught to embrace.
But the one-hour guide reminds us that grief is not a linear process. There's no right or wrong way to grieve, and there's no set timeline.
So we need to be patient with ourselves and others who are grieving.
Absolutely. And we need to allow space for the process to unfold naturally.
Okay, let's move on to chapter 7, which explores those places we go with others. The emotional terrain of relationships.
This is a big one, especially for leaders who need to build strong connections with their teams and stakeholders.
Absolutely. What does the one-hour guide highlight as being most important in this realm?
The whole one-hour guide emphasizes the importance of authenticity, vulnerability, and empathy as the cornerstones of healthy relationships.
So it's about showing up as our true selves, being willing to share our imperfections, and genuinely seeking to understand the perspectives of others.
Exactly. It's about creating a space where everyone feels safe to be themselves, to share their struggles and triumphs without fear of judgment.
And that requires trust.
Absolutely. Trust is the foundation of any strong relationship.
Now, I often get compassion and pity mixed up. Can you clarify the difference based on the insights from the one-hour guide?
Sure. The one-hour guide explains that compassion involves understanding and sharing in someone's suffering while also having a genuine desire to help.
It's like empathy in action.
Exactly. Pity, on the other hand, often creates distance. It's like we're looking down on the person who's suffering, which can actually make them feel worse.
So instead of I feel sorry for you, it's more like I'm here with you and I want to support you in any way I can.
Exactly. And that makes a world of difference.
What about empathy versus sympathy? Those are two I always struggle with.
The one-hour guide does a great job of clarifying this distinction. Empathy is about putting yourself in someone else's shoes, truly understanding their perspective and feeling their emotions with them.
Like stepping into their world.
Exactly. Sympathy, on the other hand, is more about acknowledging someone's pain from a distance.
So it's like empathy is deeper, more immersive.
Exactly. It's about connection, not just acknowledgement.
Okay, this is all so insightful. I feel like I'm gaining a whole new understanding of how these emotions operate in our lives and relationships.
That's the power of the one-hour guide by Anil Nathu. It really distills the essence of Brené Brown's work in a way that's both profound and practical. Speaking of practical, let's move on to chapter 8, which explores those places we go when we fall short.
Shame, guilt, embarrassment. Those are the emotions that can make us want to hide from the world.
Oh yeah, we all know those feelings all too well.
But the one-hour guide and Atlas of the Heart offer a more empowering way to approach them right.
They do. One of the key insights highlighted in the guide is the difference between shame and guilt.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Guilt is about our actions. It's that feeling we get when we know we've done something wrong. Shame, on the other hand, is about our sense of self. It's that feeling of being inherently flawed or unworthy.
So guilt is like, I made a mistake, while shame is more like, I am a mistake.
Exactly. And shame can be incredibly damaging because it makes us want to hide and isolate ourselves.
So how do we combat shame? How do we help ourselves or others who might be struggling with it?
The 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu emphasizes the importance of self-compassion.
Self-compassion.
Yeah, it's about treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer a friend who's made a mistake.
So instead of beating ourselves up, we offer ourselves grace and support.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a much more effective way to learn and grow from our mistakes.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
What about embarrassment? Any tips from the guide on how to handle those awkward moments that we all experience from time to time?
The 1 Hour Guide reminds us that embarrassment is a universal experience. We all have those cringeworthy moments. And often it's those moments that connect us to others because they show our humanness.
So instead of trying to hide our embarrassment, we should embrace it with a sense of humor and humility.
Exactly. It's all part of being human. Okay, let's move on to some more uplifting emotions. Chapter 9 explores those places we go when life is good. Joy, happiness, gratitude.
Now we're talking.
All right. This chapter is a celebration of all those feel-good emotions that make life worth living. But what surprised me and what the 1 Hour Guide highlights so well is the book's idea that joy can actually be a vulnerable emotion.
Vulnerable? How so? Why would we be afraid of joy?
Because sometimes we're afraid to fully embrace it for fear of losing it.
Oh, I see. We hold back almost like we're waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Exactly, and that prevents us from experiencing the fullness of joy.
So how do we overcome that fear? How do we allow ourselves to soak in the good times without worrying about them ending?
The 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu emphasizes the importance of gratitude.
Gratitude.
Yeah, when we focus on what we're grateful for, it helps us appreciate the present moment and let go of that fear of loss.
So it's about shifting our perspective from scarcity to abundance, from fear to appreciation.
Exactly. And the guide suggests that gratitude is a practice, something we can cultivate daily, even in the midst of challenges.
I love that. Okay, what about those quieter forms of happiness, like calm and contentment?
The 1 Hour Guide explores those too. Calm, as the guide explains, is not just the absence of stress, but an active state of self-regulation.
So it's about being able to manage our emotions and stay grounded even when things are chaotic around us.
Exactly. It's a skill we can develop.
And contentment. How do we cultivate that sense of deep satisfaction?
The 1 Hour Guide suggests that contentment comes from aligning our lives with our values.
So it's about feeling good about who we are and what we're doing in the world.
Exactly. And that's a powerful place to be, especially for leaders who are often bombarded with pressure and expectations.
Okay, we're almost through our emotional atlas. What's next on the journey?
Chapter 10 explores those places we go when we feel wronged. Anger, contempt, disgust. These are the fiery emotions that can be so destructive if not handled well.
Ooh, those are tough ones. But I'm sure the 1 Hour Guide and Atlas of the Heart offer some guidance on how to navigate them in a healthier way.
They do. One of the most important distinctions that the guide highlights is the difference between anger and contempt.
Well, wait on me.
Anger, as the guide explains, is a natural response to injustice. It can be a powerful force for change, but it's crucial to express anger in a healthy way without resorting to aggression or violence.
Right, it's about channeling that energy constructively.
Exactly, yeah. Contempt, on the other hand, is much more toxic. It's about looking down on someone, seeing them as less than human.
So it's a form of dehumanization.
Exactly. And that's incredibly damaging to relationships.
Yeah.
The 1 Hour Guide, following Brené Brown's work, encourages us to practice empathy even when we feel deeply wronged. It's about trying to understand the other person's perspective, even if we don't agree with it.
So it's about seeing them as a human being, not just the person who hurt us.
Exactly. And that's a powerful shift that can open the door to healing and reconciliation.
Sure, we've covered a lot of emotional ground, from the heights of joy to the depths of despair. What's the final destination on our atlas?
Chapter 11, which the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu concludes so beautifully, focuses on those places we go to self-assess. It's about how we evaluate ourselves from pride to humility, from self-righteousness to self-compassion.
So it's like taking a good, honest look in the mirror.
Exactly. And the 1 Hour Guide highlights the importance of distinguishing between healthy pride and hubris.
Hubris. Remind me what that means again.
Hubris is like pride on steroids. It's an inflated sense of self-importance, a belief that we're better than others.
So it's arrogance.
Exactly. And the 1 Hour Guide, based on Atlas of the Heart, cautions against letting hubris take over because it can lead to all sorts of problems like isolation, a lack of accountability, and strained relationships.
So how do we keep our pride in check? How do we cultivate humility without losing sight of our strengths and accomplishments?
The 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu emphasizes the importance of self-awareness. It's about being honest with ourselves about our strengths and weaknesses and being open to feedback and growth.
It's about recognizing that we're all works in progress, and that's okay.
Exactly.
This has been an incredible journey through the world of emotions. I feel like I've gained so much insight from exploring Atlas of the Heart with the guidance of the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu. What do you think, listener? Are you feeling more equipped to navigate your own emotional landscape?
I hope so. The key takeaway, as the guide emphasizes, is that emotions are data, not directives.
Data, not directives.
Yeah, they're valuable sources of information, but they don't have to control us. When we understand our emotions, we can use them as fuel for growth, connection, and meaningful action.
That's such a powerful reframing. It's not about suppressing our emotions or pretending they don't exist.
It's about acknowledging them, understanding them, and then choosing how we want to respond.
Exactly. It's about taking back the reins. So for our listener who's already on this path of personal and professional development, what are some actionable steps they can take to further develop their emotional intelligence?
Well, first of all, I highly recommend checking out the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu.
It's a fantastic resource.
It is. It really distills the essence of Brené Brown's work in a way that's both profound and practical.
And it's perfect for busy people who want to learn efficiently.
Exactly. And the 1 Hour Guide is available on their website, so it's easy to access, and you can start applying these insights right away.
So that's the first step. Get the guide. What comes next?
I think the most important thing is to cultivate a sense of curiosity about your own emotions. Start paying attention to how you feel in different situations.
So it's about becoming an observer of our own internal world.
Exactly, like a scientist studying their own emotional patterns.
The more aware we become, the more empowered we'll be to make choices that align with our values and goals.
Exactly. It's about taking control of the narrative rather than letting our emotions run the show.
And remember, this is a practice. It takes time and intention,
Yeah,
but the rewards are immeasurable.
absolutely.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into the world of emotions. Thank you for guiding us through it, and thank you, listener, for joining us on this journey. If you're ready to unlock the power of emotional intelligence in your own life, I highly encourage you to check out the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu. It's a fantastic resource that can help you transform your understanding of yourself and others and ultimately lead a more fulfilling and successful life. Visit the 1 Hour Guide website for more business insights by Anil Nathu.